But meantime, let's talk about Mike Gosney. Michael Gosney is a real dear friend of ours, and we've known him at least since the late 90s. But he goes much before that. He's been on the forefront of the digital technology connecting to. You're gonna,
I
okay.
don't know how to do it.
Well, anyway, let it be, right? So
Try it.
he worked with a Verbum magazine, and I think that you were also involved with. No, what's the other one I'm talking about here?
What's that?
Well, I made some just some bullet points.
Let me just introduce Michael. It's much more complicated than I can explain, but he's been on the forefront of this, the digital and the print media worlds converging, and the experiential world, and digital technologies, and how to integrate into people's personal experiences in a very profound way that I will defer to him to explain a little bit to you. But just suffice it to say that we know him because of the digital beings. In the late 90s, we were doing the Human Rights in the Drug War campaign, and Michael invited us to have have a presentation there. And we may have, I don't know how much before that we may have met Michael, but that's when you made a big impression on us.
Yeah.
And since then, we've worked with him at Deep Green and the How Weird Street Fairs. And lots of things, but it's the digital beings for which he is definitely the most profoundly known from our experience,
Yeah.
and it shaped a lot of people's experience,
And
gave an exposure to a lot of
and then deep green.
yeah, and
And
Deep
then
Green.
yeah, into the 2000s with the deep green.
A cannabis being, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, we want to hear about your journey, Michael.
Hmm.
It's
Well, thank you
fascinating.
guys.
How,
This is very cool. And you know, I certainly would encourage a little more conversational exchange today. And you know, Chris and Mickey, you know me, and Nikki and Swami, certainly very dear friends for a very long time. And we've all been on some amazing journeys together. And but yeah, you know, I have found myself involved in really, you might say, the consciousness movement from very, very early on. And like you, Chris, I was always motivated to publish information, you know, and I was involved in the small press scene in the late 80s, and I was editing the Journal of Holistic Health. And that's when all the new age stuff was starting, right? And there was all these small presses that were doing books on, you know, organic gardening and, you know, midwifery and holistic health and so forth. But there was one category, and everybody was like, if they had a bestseller, it would be a couple thousand copies, right? But there was Andor Press published the books on how to grow marijuana, and they sold 100,000 copies. And so it was early on that I, you know, got engaged in, you know, the overall more progressive consciousness movement. But yeah, I went on to start a Verbum magazine, an early desktop published magazine, all about digital media, and that's when I was really, I mean, leading up to that, starting the magazine, and then the experience of publishing it over 5 years. We were at the intersection at a very vital time when all of the digital tools were being created, and the artists were early adopter artists were working with the tool makers, and I'm talking about Photoshop, et cetera, right, being invented during that period. And I saw how deep was the, you know, consciousness drug culture in the technology space, from, you know, venture capitalists to you know, super brilliant programmers, and many of the engineers in the tech world are totally into music and have their own bands and stuff. And so, you know, I did find myself in quite a milieu there in the early 90s. And I've, for some reason, just found myself often at the intersection of these kind of cultural circles. And that was certainly something that the digital being became, because for those of you who don't know, the human being was a kind of a, you know, legendary 60s event on January 14th, 1967, where 20,000 people gathered in Golden Gate Park, and Tim Leary said, turn on, tune in, drop out, etc. And so our digital BN was a tip of the hat to that, but it became more literally the thing in the 90s. By the fourth one, which became a public event after having been a invitation-only party at Macworld Expo, the fourth one became a public event. It was the 25th anniversary on that date of the human being, and it was the fourth digital being. So, and then Timothy Leary and Chet Helms and Alan Cohen, you know, the organizers of the human being, became part of the digital being through the 90s. And so we had amazing people on stage over those years, and Dennis Perone, you know, I remember, you know, the New Year's party at the dispensary building, you know, back in 95, I think that was, you know, and just incredible. But interestingly, I met Tim and became very good friends with Tim Leary during his last 5 years, because, you know, well, one thing we just did hit it off, but he retired and was very involved in digital culture, and most people don't know that, but he was super engaged in that world. You know, was at our digital being several years, but also we did big parties at his house in LA during the Digital Hollywood conferences, and he just loved the whole computer scene. But yeah, so, and then, you know, just living in the Bay Area from, I was in San Diego for many years, but I moved here to the Bay Area in 95, and just the psychedelic culture here.
You know, Michael, thanks for the introduction. Can we just start off with some questions, and you can
Totally.
Oh,
Yeah.
although unless he wants to keep talking about it.
Well, you can either keep going, but I was going to say, what was it that
Yeah,
started
fine.
you on your path early on? I mean, how early on did you feel like that you were somehow going to the spiritual and psychedelic, or the spiritual and technological connection? How did that come up to you as a feeling in your life, and how did
Well, you know, I think it emerged at several points, but I did have, I think as many of us did, particularly in those kind of, you know, kind of wild and woolly days of early psychedelics use. And you know, I graduated from high school in 1972, and I was back in Kansas City, went out to Arizona State in 1973, and which itself was like going to another planet, Tempe, Arizona, right, from suburbs of Kansas City, Missouri. But there I had a wake-up call, and it had to do with LSD and Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon. And I essentially saw my future life, and had just an incredible, and I was, you know, it threw me off. It took me a few years to kind of get my shit together. But anyway, that was where I had a spiritual, I was like, this is definitely a consciousness thing going on here. There's something significant. We're evolving, you know. and you know, and I was picking up on a lot of the cool music, and you know, Tim Leary. I remember having Tim Leary's High Priest book, which was quite a fascinating pastiche of material that he had woven together, that at the time was quite telling.
And so, at what point do you end up smoking cannabis, or having any kind of a connection?
Well, that's the funny thing too, is I had a unique experience living in these Kansas City suburbs, you know, kind of upper middle class suburbs, and Boulder was the big connection near Kansas City. And at that time, in the early 70s, it was hash coming from all over the world through Boulder to, you know, to us. And so my experience of getting high was when I was 17, 18 years old, on any given weekend. What should we get? Some red Lebanese, some of that green Moroccan. How about that Laird Primo? Oh, you know, what about the gold seal? The gold seal. Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. And I didn't smoke actually pot for a year, but just exotic hash. That's all I knew. And then a friend came back from Vietnam, classic, right? With this skunky weed. And I can tell you that was a revelatory moment, feeling that whole plant, you know, totally different than the hash, kind of heady hash high, just the whole body, you know, entourage effect to the max. And but then we had, you know, like back then, you know, gradually Colombian, what a discovery. Colombian, wow, you know. So yeah, equally influenced by and an advocate for cannabis and psychedelics, you know, for many years and in different ways. And but I did appreciate the opportunity to produce Deep Green, which is worth mentioning. And that was Earth Dance, and that's an international dance party for peace that we've been doing for 25 years. It's a nonprofit, and we have on the 21st International Day of Peace of September, 21st September every year, multi-location party all over the world, different events on the same day. And but anyway, Earth Dance it started at Turtle Creek with a conversation on the deck, but it was all about how these hemp cons and these stupid events that were going on back in 09, 010 needed an upgrade. And so we did Deep Green on Earth Day, 2011 and 12, and took over a Craneway Pavilion up in Richmond, California, and made a whole cannabis village. And they were fantastic events, and they did help kind of, you know, create a new octave, so to speak, of events, conference and festival, and tying in the hemp side of the equation, which still needs a lot more juice, the whole industrial hemp world. Yeah. But
yeah, it seemed like you always were, brought in the environmental angle,
well, and that's an
with the
important
Earth
thing.
Day.
Yeah, it is. And I was noticing that Kylie asked a question, intersections of tech and nature. Well, absolutely. I mean, first of all, what the tech thing is about taking mushrooms and going, oh, it's all a network. I get it. And, you know, these guys were just seeing nature's designs and employing, unwittingly in some cases, biomimicry, mimicking nature's systems and creating the early computer networks and so forth, right? And so there's that. But then there's the wake up call that, oh, it's all interconnected. We're all interdependent, and we better get our shit together with our environmental equation. You know, that's a very common response to the psychedelic experience. Certainly the mushrooms, more than I think others, immediately convey that, you know, awareness. And so, yeah, but that's another kind of intersection that I had the pleasure
Let's talk about the connection into the computer world and how that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, that
that's what makes the jump that a lot of people didn't.
Yeah, I produced the, well, first of all, the last 3 digital be-ins were also held on Earth Day. And they were the themes were planet code, biomimicry, and eco city. So that was taking the whole digital thing and looking at those topics. But then we did in 99, 97, 99, and 2001, the Paradox conferences at Arco Santi. And that was those were kind of epic events, bringing leaders in the environmental space together with leaders in the tech space. And we also had a great trance party out there in the high desert, Arco Santi, 60 miles north of Phoenix, model eco city. which is still happening, and I'm still involved in that project, by the way. Arizona State has a number of institutions that are doing great environmental innovations with materials, technologies, and so forth. And they're going to engage in part through my efforts with Arcosani as their test lab, urban laboratory. So, but anyway, the Paradox conferences were pretty formative, and that connection is now much more common between tech and environmental, obviously, but back then it wasn't so much.
So Nikki and Swami have a question.
Yeah, hi. Well, I've had the pleasure of dancing for many, many hours to Gaz's music because he's also one hell of a great DJ. And so my question is, Michael G, how does cannabis affect your music and your spirituality in that way?
Well, thank you. Well, certainly cannabis affects my spirituality by partly, I think, just stimulating my intellect, my curiosity, and kind of opening my mind, right, to stretch and accept new ideas and so forth. And so I think it from early on, smoking cannabis and reading books and digging into, what is this, what does Kierkegaard have to say here, and, so, I mean, but as far as the music, yeah, well, that it just goes kind of hand in hand. I mean, I was always inspired, cannabis had a big part to play in my appreciation of music. First, more producing events and then becoming a DJ myself, which was pretty great. Relatively later, I guess I was around 40 when I started DJing, and having that experience of that creative expression was quite a relief. It's like it had been pent up for quite a long time, being able to actually express myself through the music, and decidedly right-brained kind of activity versus the left-brained of publishing and all the multimedia production stuff that I had been doing, like in the mid 90s when I started DJing and out at Burning Man and all that. I kind of transitioned away from words into music. It was very interesting. Not completely, of course, but.
Michael, also, I remember you were talking about Deep Green, and I think Deep Green was a kind of pathway breaking thing, and it certainly had an effect on the Emerald Cup. That from that point on, there was a whole other day incorporated into the Emerald Cup for lectures and learning and guest speakers and all that sort of thing, right? Yeah. But I remember at Deep Green, the one of them that I was on a panel with John Perry Barlow and Mountain Girl, right? And It was curious because I'd never met them before, right? Which is absolutely crazy, but I'd never met them before. Yeah. But that's one of your qualities of putting people together from different places and say, okay, here, you're going to interact, you're going to do something. And so you gave us the assignment to talk about cannabis as a spiritual ally. And that was the assignment, right? And in some ways, we kind of flubbed the assignment because we just talked about whatever we really wanted to talk about.
Right? You and Barlow. And Mountain Girl, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, right. And that was wonderful. But the whole event was really great because that's when I met David Bronner for the first time. And and so also just a little tip of the hat to Matt Marshall, who was kind of the part of the financial inspiration, shall we say, behind it all.
That's
and
correct.
One of those. Right. And so, but we took over Craneway Pavilion, man, and it was just like we blew everybody's body. We even had a smoking lounge out in the back.
Right.
That was an epic.
We had the vapor lounge inside, and the smoking lounge out back. So 2 areas, and there was at one point where the mayor, the police chief, and the city council guy from Richmond were touring the facility inside, right? And they come up to the vapor lounge tent in the middle of this, giant space, and that's where you have to show your card that you have your medical card. Then you can go in and you can smoke out of a 6-foot vape bag that's being passed around. And so anyway, they were trying to go in and they were stopped at the door by one of our people. They said, "We need to see your medical."
Love it.
So there was,
We're
we did
totally
good with
legit
that.
here. We're totally legit here. So
All
anyway,
right.
so many fun memories, Michael, and let's have a lot more.
Yeah, and really, truly, you are the great connector, Michael.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, listen, I want to remind everybody that the psychedelic space now, after we've gone through and still going through different waves of the cannabis transformation, and boy, we sure hope we get a legal structure that works in California at some point. But anyway, the psychedelic revolution going on right now is pretty fucking amazing. And I have been very involved. I'm backpedaling now because of my illness, but been very involved in a number of the companies that in Canada, and also Brett Leonard, if some of you may know Brett, who did the Lawnmower Man film in 1990 that exposed virtual reality to the mainstream, is a company called Virtual Psychedelics, and using VR for therapy for more preparation and integration, not necessarily with the psychedelics, by the way, but couple other companies, very cool companies in Canada that are developing fantastic products and opening clinics and things, and it's wonderful. But I want to cite Synergetic Press, which is a publishing house I've been working with for a number of years, and we now are the premier psychedelic publisher. I mentioned this, I think, before, but we took over Maps Publishing, we took over Sasha Shulgin's Transform Press. So if you want information on psychedelics, that's the place to be, the Synergetic Press. So, and it's amazing seeing what's going on with all the decrim movements and everything. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, Michael, speaking of psychedelics, I want to have other memory about the Digital Bee and the one that was down south of Market in the Soma building, right? And
Yeah.
Parked outside was Ken Kesey's second Further bus, right?
Right.
And and so I never met him before, but he was kind of like the final psychedelic one I needed to meet. And so here I am. I just gotten back from India for like the first time, and Nikki says, "Let's go to the Digital Bee," and so we're there. But this is a real one, and now I'm in the bus with Kesey smoking a joint or a chillum or something like that. And it was like just one of those ways in which you make these magic things happen together. And then Kesey went on stage and did a whole performance, right? And actually, that's where I also met Bruce Margolin for the first time, who's also on this broadcast. So hi, Bruce, nice to see you. And these connections that you keep making. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of what you've done to the community. You're a real community builder, Michael. That's something I give you a lot of credit for. And we have two more questions here, Jane Leonard and Mark Bergson. So Jane, why don't you chime in?
I just want to send a thanks to Michael for connecting me, as he does, as everybody is mentioning, to Bob at 6 Degrees Records, who is doing this sound balm meditation series. And so I got to collaborate with a pretty famous, I guess, on the festival circuit.
Bombay Dub or
Adam Shake.
Oh, Adam Shake, yeah.
Adam Shake.
Yeah, so he's pairing very well-known electronic artists with narrative artists such as yourself, and it's really
so that
cool.
was a really special collaboration for me. I really appreciate that, Michael. Also, did you say you went to UMKC?
No, I went to Lawrence.
Okay.
For 1 year.
Gotcha. I got my degree at UMKC, so I lived in the right on Valentine in Kansas City.
Okay, well, I grew up there in Leawood, Kansas.
Right on.
But I was out of there right out of high school. I was out west, never came back.
Gotcha.
So,
thank you. Cannamaste.
Thank you, dear.
That was your question. Okay.
Yeah, and Mark Bergson, I thought I saw your hand up a minute ago.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, so much for your reflections and your insights. I've so enjoyed listening to you speak. And I have a kind of like a two-part question. It just launches off from you started talking about this revolution and attitude towards psychedelics. I think of these developments, which, 20 years ago, it would have been impossible to imagine, like Johns Hopkins having a Center for Psychedelic Studies, or, mainstream writers like Michael Pollan talking about his psychedelic experiences in a book, the therapeutic studies and uses, the decriminalization movement and microdosing becoming increasingly popular. So first part of the question is, how hopeful are you that this is going to kind of continue and become an enduring now change in how we look at consciousness exploration, or given the other political currents that are there sort of in tension with all of this?
Yeah.
Is that like a cause for concern? Are you very hopeful about it? And second part of the question is, if in the end, it really does become a lot more widespread and mainstream, one thing that seems really crucial, this is a key part of Pollan's book, is the importance of really good guides. I mean, these are incredibly powerful. And if a lot of people are going to be exploring these, the idea of like making sure you have good experiences, training people, getting them out there. So how do you think about that part of this new movement? So those are my two.
All right. Well, those are, those big topics in general. Well, there's certainly what I see as a kind of a parallel movement happening. And by the way, Michael Pollan's book, and as a publisher, I've always, respected the power of books and words, right? And that to me, the publication of that book has got incredible evolutionary impact on the human race, in my opinion, because he has such a following and so international. And so he gave millions of people permission to just open their minds and think about fucking psychedelics instead of making a wall, and there's no turning back, and everything that's followed, as you were just mentioning, right? It's so, but there's the two sides there's just people have been doing mushrooms forever. And as some of my friends in these companies that are going public in Canada also remind us, hey, we've all been, people have been raving. We created these safe environments. We had these transpersonal experiences together doing and et cetera, et cetera. That's all been healing. That's part of the therapy that's already been going on in the culture. We've been self-medicating in all different ways. Obviously, we've fucked up a lot of ways too, right? But we've obviously done a lot to compensate for this crazy world we live in by creating these safe spaces for our consciousness and sharing and love, right? And so that's going on. That's the decrim movement. That's the cannabis churches cropping up, mushroom churches and cannabis. But at the same time, then there's the very interesting, steady as she goes, like progress being made on the certificate, the whole MAPS trajectory of having therapists who are authorized now to administer the MDMA that Rick Doblin, the biggest dealer of all, provides. But seriously, all different kinds of remarkable.
But seriously, folks.
The psilocybin research is incredible. What's going on with their finding? There's so much there. It's just like cannabis is like unfolding just this amazing treasure chest of things. And so, yeah, the actual therapy and curing mental illness of many different kinds it's on the way. Over the next 5 years, it's going to be dramatic. The clinics are already opening everywhere. Ketamine is allowing that to happen. Ketamine kind of leading the way with the clinics. But yeah, it's pretty exciting.
I have a question. What are you most proud of your life?
I mean, is there something?
I mean, is there something
Well,
that
all right. I
you
mean,
feel like you're
At least in this moment feels like it.
yeah, at least right now. What do you feel like you
I
most
mean,
the contribution you have made to this life we've
Whether
shared.
heralded or unheralded.
Yeah,
In fact, perhaps the most
Because-
overlooked, if that even becomes.
no, listen, I mean, I think I'm just very, I feel very fortunate uh, to have, as you guys were saying, I found myself at these intersections, and just for whatever reason, it's always been collaboration. I've been a collaborator, somebody has to lead the charge on things, right? But you can't do it by yourself. And so creating, group projects and creating community thereby has been one of my great pleasures in life. It's absolutely, I'm very proud of these things, and they become clearer in retrospect. During the pandemic, I've been going through my archives, which I'm wanting to get organized, all these videos and all this stuff, because it's pretty important cultural era, that particular 85 to 95, right? Kind of pre-internet, when everything went digital and everything was happening. There'll never be anything like the 90s in San Francisco, by the way. I mean, that's just where it all was interblending, right? The tech, the rave, the Burning Man, the green consciousness, the
the art.
health, the VR, everything. And so, but yeah, I'm very proud of my wonderful friends. Great honor to know so many remarkable people over these years, and I'm very proud of my kids, a couple of beautiful daughters, and 3 grandkids, which was a
Wow.
recent surprise. Over the past 5 years, suddenly 3 grandkids. So, but yeah, no one thing, right? I mean, it's just been different projects. And
Well, one of the things I would give you is you seem to be like a manifester, in terms of making things happen, and to varying extents, but you seem to be like managed to get yourself right into the middle of manifesting these events and experiences and technological and changes and shifts and things like that. So I would thank you for that very much.
Yeah, and the raising of the consciousness.
Yeah.
Definitely,
And the great artwork makes me say, how do you get all that artwork? And I mean, how much do you generate a lot of that yourself, or who are the artists that you work with that you would give a shout out to?
well, I have a very dear friend of mine and super talented all-around artist, Landon Elmore, who, if you're thinking about the posters and the flyers and the stuff and websites, he's been behind a lot of that. And but yeah, just kind of attracting and recruiting talented people, and but I have been the art director conceptually for most all these things, which I really enjoy. The Digital Being, by the way, you can see a great little documentary, like 10-minute documentary on YouTube of Digital
We
Being.
have that ready. We were going to use that as a going out, by the way. So
at the end of the program.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We'll play it for if people want to stay around and watch it. It's
Yeah.
really
presuming
something.
that technology doesn't mess it up for us.
A lot of luminaries in there, actually.
Right. Yeah. Well,
I think you really have been at the forefront of so many things. It's really interesting when I hear, especially when I learn more about your life story. It's just like, okay, what's the next thing that needs to happen? And then it's kind of like, give that vision a visionary, I would say.
He's contributed to Cannamaste too. He's brought people he's kind of how we got into Cannamaste. I think he's how we met you, Chris and Mickey, through Gosney and so on. So, I mean, and also that's how we met Terry and Katie because of that connection, right? Because of Braylove and Gosney and so on. It's like these sort of it's almost like the mycelium in the forest, how all these like fungal connections make everything, and they go to the roots of the cannabis and they connect our souls as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I owe Michael a special gratitude because he got me a speaker slot at the Conscious Life Expo down in LA. And at that expo, I got to try out a vibration platform, which I was quite skeptical of when I first stood on it. But I had chronic back pain. That was my reason for having medical marijuana approvals up to that point. And it was just a time when you didn't need it. It was a transition after Prop 64, so you didn't no longer needed a doctor's note. And I went there and I stood on. They said, "Oh, does this help your back pain?" And I got on that guy and for 10 minutes and then got off. And I thought, well, I don't know. But then half an hour later, I said to Mickey, "Wow, I don't even feel my back. It feels so good." Basically, then thereby negating my medical need for cannabis.
The vibration platform
Yeah.
from the Conscious Life Expo. We didn't buy it there, but
Yay.
we got one, and it's changed his,
Yeah.
relationship to chronic back pain.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Definitely.
Thanks
For
for
the
that.
better.
Side effect of that, but also for getting me to be able to speak there. And you've gotten me opportunities to speak at a lot of events that, otherwise I wouldn't have ended up at, and thereby expanding the audience and the consciousness, as you say.
Well, yeah, we even got Chris and Mickey down to Howard Street Fair, where we've got 10 stages and 15,000 people dancing in the streets for our green alley, where we're given a whole cannabis.
Howling winds and freezing temperatures. We're in the coldest part of the city.
The coldest part of the year.
Right, the coldest part of the year. That was great. And so, anyways, so we do want to show that video.
Did anybody else have a question?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Why don't we take another maybe 10 minutes or whatever, wrap up with people if you have questions, or if you have something you want to say, we can do
Maybe
that.
some people have some of their own experiences to share about the psychedelic cannabis connect.
Hi, Michael. This is Linda Delaire.
Hey.
I remember we met in 1997, 1998, Robert Comics.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
On the
know.
Green Trail all these years.
He says he'll always remember you as a visionary.
Uh-huh.
That's a good term for you, Michael.
Yeah. And so, I want to show you this. I don't know can you see this?
Yeah, it looks like a hemp fiber insulation.
It's coming out really, really big. And you've seen this.
I
This
think,
is
yeah, hemp plastic.
correct. Yes, 100%
Right.
correct.
Woohoo!
So
Is that like compostable?
this I've had this probably since 2014. So, I don't even know, but it is a hemp plastic. Nothing is compostable in terms of plastic. That's just you can maybe make it into something else, but it's never really going to go away, which is why hemp is so important to replace petroleum in the way we make it. But we're still far behind, but we're catching up. That's why I wanted to show that to Michael, because it's the hemp side of cannabis. It's the same sacred plant that'll feed us and house us and clothe us and heal us. So hemp, hooray.
Thanks for all your good work in promoting hemp solutions, Linda.
Yeah.
She's great. You've done a fantastic job getting the word out for everybody, Linda. We really honor you with high honor, and we honor you with high honor, Michael, for sure.
Thank you so much, guys.
A lot of positive outcomes for your health,
And it looks like Jane Heaven has a question for you.
Okay, she didn't raise her hand the regular way, so.
Yes.
She's a different
Michael, would you have a cosmic experience, a kind of a peak cosmic experience that you've had with cannabis or psychedelics that you'd like to share with us? And any vision? You mentioned something about that earlier, your first experience with cannabis.
Well, I was actually mentioning my kind of wake up, very, very intense spiritual wake up experience with having taken LSD and then listening to the Dark Side of the Moon album for the first time. And I had seen Pink Floyd also play out there, you know, so this is 1973. And but yeah, I mean, that was, I mean, I can just refer to that one. And part of the vision there was just seeing the undeniable reality of a higher order behind things, you know, and just what I came later to understand as mythic transmission, you know, the mythos coming through the art. But yeah, that's where I, you know, I realized later that that's where as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the technology people saw the network vision and the various technology solutions really from psychedelic experience, you know, and I got an early hit there of technology. That's why I was always attracted to it later in life. But at that time, I just saw the incredible interconnectedness of the whole thing. And so, but you know, I've had some amazing experiences. I mean, like so many of us out at Burning Man, right? You know, you're just like, just this feeling of novelty, things like off the novelty meter, you know, I mean, going, you know, like Terrence looks at things that way a lot. Where's the novelty? And, but at Burning Man with the physical environment and then the consciousness, the internal environment of these thousands of people tripping in different ways and just kind of having some pretty profound insights and realizations out there. But nothing, no, I'm sorry, I can't come up with a particular, like, that was, you know, a landmark. There's been many points along the way. I mean, I think that's kind of what we have. We have these moments of insight, you know, and they stay with us like everything does. But the moments of insights are a big part of life.
So then what's coming up next with you at this point? Do you have any future events that you've, or the next edge of technological human consciousness interaction that we should know about, and tips going forward?
You know, I'm just excited about these psychedelic companies. I am working on a project, you know, my whole Verbum magazine thing, which, you know, was curating artists working with the digital media back then, right? That's what being the editor of the magazine was about. But prior to that, I did my own art exhibit. That's how it all started. I did a one-man show. And then I also formed the Verbum Gallery of Digital Art in San Diego. That was a physical gallery and had several of the early digital artists. So long story short, I got a wonderful technology partner and we're going to launch the Verbum Gallery of Digital Art NFT gallery online. And it'll include some of my early works because I still have signed and numbered silk screens and laser prints of my work on the Macintosh Plus, believe it or not, you know, doing artwork on the Mac Plus, and so that's fun. That's could make some money too. Who knows? It's kind of a weird space, but it's going to be interesting to experiment in the NFT space.
All right, well, thanks so much for everything you're doing and have done, and thanks for taking the time out to visit with us today.
Well, thank you guys for listening. That's a lot of blabbing.
No, it's
Well,
fascinating, actually.
Really cool to hear your journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Maybe
It's
we'll
great
get
sharing
another.
with you all. And I really appreciate this circle very much.
All right,
Yeah, thank
and
you.
thanks for
Yes,
Love
thanks,
you.
guys.
adding the
Great, man.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to come up to Turtle Creek, you know, we got you.
I'll be there, Swami. All right.
And I have to credit, it was Gosney who pointed out that Cantheism is a good alternative spelling to Cantheism in that it brings atheism into the equation. So you don't have any theism to have a spiritual relationship with cannabis. So then, do you want to go ahead and do this video?